12 flags hung in the great chamber of harmony's edge, each one representing a civilization that had mastered the stars. Today, a 13th would join them, and not a single delegate believed they deserved to be there. Ambassador Dmitry Volkov walked across the crystal floor with slow, measured steps. He was 63 years old, with silver hair cut short and a face that had seen too many hard winters. Behind him walked 3 aides, all of them silent, all of them watching the alien faces that surrounded them. The chamber was beautiful in a cold way. Light filtered through walls of living crystal, casting rainbow patterns across the floor. The air smelled clean, almost too clean, like a hospital. Representatives from 12 species sat in floating chairs arranged in a perfect circle. They looked at the humans the way a teacher might look at a child who had wandered into the wrong classroom. Counselor Threve rose from his seat. He was Rithani, a tall insectoid creature with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the light like dark jewels. His voice clicked and hummed as the translator turned his words into something Dmitri could understand. "The Coalition welcomes humanity's application for membership," Threve said. The words were polite. The tone was not. "We have reviewed your species' history with great interest. Your rapid technological progress is notable. However, we must express concern about your planet's troubled past." Dmitri said nothing. He had expected this. "Your world has known thousands of wars," Threve continued. "Your nations have built weapons capable of destroying your own civilization. Twice in your recent history, your entire planet nearly burned." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "We wonder if such a species is ready for the responsibilities of galactic citizenship." A low rumble came from across the chamber. Admiral Gresh, a massive reptilian creature covered in green scales, leaned forward in his seat. The Morthani were warriors, proud of their military traditions. Gresh had commanded fleets for 300 years. "I have seen the human military reports," Gresh said, and his translator carried the amusement in his voice. "Chemical propulsion systems, kinetic weapons, explosive projectiles." He made a sound that might have been laughter. "These are museum pieces, toys for children. The humans fight with fire and metal while we command the forces of stars." Several delegates made sounds of agreement. A Kelori diplomat, small and covered in soft fur, whispered to his neighbor. Dmitri caught the translated words, "Primitive but eager. Perhaps they can be useful for minor tasks." Dmitri waited until the chamber grew quiet. Then he spoke, his voice calm and even. "The Coalition is right to question us," he said. "We are young, we have made terrible mistakes, we have hurt ourselves in ways that still bring us shame." He looked around the room, meeting each alien gaze without fear. "But we have also survived. Every war taught us something. Every mistake made us stronger. We do not ask for respect we have not earned. We ask only for the chance to prove ourselves." Counselor Threve studied the human for a long moment. There was something in the ambassador's eyes that the Rithani could not quite read. It was not fear, not anger, not pride. It was something older, something patient. "Very well," Threve said at last. "Humanity is accepted into the Galactic Coalition. You will be assigned to humanitarian missions and minor peacekeeping operations. In time, perhaps you will earn greater responsibilities." The vote was quick. 11 species voted yes. Admiral Gresh abstained, still amused by the thought of humans playing at war with their primitive weapons. That night, Dmitri sat alone in his quarters aboard the station. The room was comfortable but unfamiliar. Everything was designed for species that did not sleep as humans did not eat as humans did not think as humans did. He pulled out a small tablet and began reading. The files were old, written in languages that most of his crew did not know. Military histories from Earth. Accounts of battles fought with swords and spears, with arrows and shields, with rifles and tanks and bombs. Hannibal crossing the Alps with elephants. The Mongols conquering half a continent on horseback. Soldiers in muddy trenches surviving poison gas and machine gun fire. Partisans fighting impossible odds against occupying armies. Civilians picking up weapons to defend their homes. The Coalition thought war was about technology. The bigger gun, the faster ship, the more powerful shield. They had evolved past the messy, brutal business of killing and dying. Their wars were clean, precise, almost elegant. They had never faced an enemy who would rather die than surrender. They had never fought someone who would burn their own cities to deny them to an invader. They had never met a species that had spent 10,000 years learning every way to kill and every way to survive. Dmitri closed the tablet and looked out the window at the stars. The Coalition did not understand humans yet. That was fine. They would learn. He smiled just a little and wondered how long it would take. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, something old and hungry was beginning to stir. It had slept for 2,000 years, dreaming of worlds burning and species screaming. Soon it would wake and it would feed. The Coalition thought they knew war. They had no idea. The distress signal had been repeating for 6 hours before anyone heard it. By the time the Resolute arrived, there was nothing left to save. Captain Amara Okonkwo stood in the observation deck and looked at what remained of the Rithani research station. It had been a beautiful structure once, a ring of silver metal floating above a small moon. Now it was torn open like fruit, its insides scattered across 1,000 kilometers of space. No energy weapon signatures, her tactical officer reported. His voice was steady, professional, but Amara could hear the confusion beneath it. No plasma burns, no radiation consistent with standard Coalition weapons. Then what did this? Amara asked. Unknown, Captain. The damage patterns suggest physical force. Something tore through the hull with what appears to be claws or blades. Amara felt a chill run down her spine. She had served in Earth's military for 20 years before joining the Coalition fleet. She had seen what violence looked like up close. This was not a battle. This was a slaughter. Life signs. 12 escape pods, faint signals. They appear to have been drifting for approximately 40 hours. Amara ordered the rescue immediately. Within an hour, her medical team had brought 19 survivors aboard. Most of them were unconscious. The ones who were awake would not stop screaming. Dr. Wei Ling worked through the night, treating injuries and administering sedatives. When she finally came to the bridge, her face was pale. They're in shock, she told Amara. Deep psychological trauma. Whatever attacked them, it wasn't just trying to kill them, it was trying to terrify them. Did any of them say what happened? Wei Ling nodded slowly. One scientist, a Rithani named Bren, he kept saying the same thing over and over. They came through the walls. We shot them and they kept coming. They adapted. They learned. Nothing stopped them. Amara thought about those words for a long time. Adapted. Learned. She had fought enemies who learned from their mistakes. But learning in the middle of a battle, changing their biology to counter weapons in real time, that was something else entirely. She sent her report to Coalition Command and waited for a response. The response was disappointing. Counselor Threve himself reviewed the evidence and concluded that the attack was likely the work of pirates or rogue elements. The Coalition had not seen a serious military threat in centuries. They could not imagine that one might exist. Over the next 3 months, Amara's report was proven correct in the worst possible way. Attacks spread across the outer colonies like a disease. Mining stations went silent. Agricultural worlds sent frantic messages about shadows in the night before their communications cut off. A Morthani battle cruiser, one of the most powerful ships in the Coalition fleet, engaged the attackers and was torn apart in 17 minutes. The recordings from that battle reached Coalition Command with no commentary needed. The enemy moved through space like living darkness. Their ships were not metal but flesh, organic vessels that healed damage as fast as it was inflicted. When Coalition plasma weapons hit them, the creatures screamed and burned. When the same weapons hit them again, they did nothing. The enemy had adapted. Admiral Gresh was no longer laughing. He sat in the War Council chamber, watching the footage for the 100th time, his scales dull with stress. The Vorath, Counselor Threve said. His voice was quiet, almost afraid. We thought they were extinct. We thought our ancestors destroyed them 2,000 years ago." "What are they?" Amara asked. She had been summoned to the council as a witness, the first coalition officer to encounter the enemy and survive. "Nightmares," Threve replied. "Living weapons created by a species that died before we reached the stars. They do not think like us. They do not want territory or resources or power. They want only one thing, the extinction of all other life." The council chamber fell silent. For the first time in centuries, the great civilizations of the coalition faced something they could not negotiate with, could not outthink, could not defeat through superior technology. Threve turned to look at the human captain standing among the delegates. He remembered what he had said about humanity 3 years ago. Museum pieces, primitive weapons, a species too violent for civilized space. "Captain Okonkwo," he said slowly, "I believe we need to speak with your military command." Amara looked at the fear in the alien eyes around her. These were species that had built empires, conquered diseases, mastered the fabric of space itself. And they were terrified because they faced an enemy that would not fight fair, would not surrender, would not stop. She thought about Earth, about the wars her ancestors had fought against enemies who wanted their total destruction, about the lengths they had gone to survive. "I think that would be wise," she said. The coalition was about to learn what humans had known for 10,000 years. Sometimes the only way to survive is to become more terrifying than the thing trying to kill you. General Sophia Reyes had never expected to stand in a room full of aliens. She had spent 30 years fighting human wars on human worlds, commanding soldiers who bled red and died screaming in languages she understood. Now she stood before creatures that breathed different air and thought with different minds, and all of them were looking at her like she was their last hope. The War Council chamber was crowded. Admirals and commanders from every coalition species filled the floating seats, their attention fixed on the holographic display in the center of the room. The display showed a map of coalition space. Red marks covered it like wounds, each one representing a world that had gone silent. Admiral Gresh spoke first. His scales had lost their shine, and his voice carried none of the arrogance Sophia had read about in the reports. "Our fleets cannot stop them," he said. "We have tried concentrated fire, dispersed formations, defensive positions, offensive strikes. Nothing works. They adapt to everything we do." "Show me the battle footage," Sophia said. The hologram shifted to show a fleet engagement. Coalition ships moved in perfect formation, their plasma cannons firing in coordinated volleys. The Vorath vessels absorbed the fire, their organic hulls burning and then healing. When the coalition ships fired again with the same weapons, the enemy barely flinched. "You keep using the same weapons the same way," Sophia observed. Gresh looked confused. "They are our most powerful weapons. What else would we use?" Sophia almost smiled, almost. "Have you tried using the same weapon differently? Changing timing, angles, combinations? Have you tried mixing weapon types within the same assault?" The alien commanders exchanged glances. A Kelori admiral spoke up. "Our combat doctrine emphasizes optimal weapon deployment. Each weapon system has a calculated ideal use. Deviation from optimal parameters reduces efficiency." "Efficiency," Sophia repeated. "You're fighting a war of efficiency against an enemy that doesn't care about efficiency. They care about winning. They'll do anything to win. Will you?" Silence filled the chamber. Sophia could see the discomfort on their alien faces. They had evolved past the brutal mathematics of survival warfare. Their conflicts were measured, controlled, almost civilized. The Vorath were none of those things. Sophia pulled up her own files on the holographic display. Images from Earth's history appeared. Ancient armies clashing with swords and spears. Soldiers in trenches, their faces covered with gas masks. Tanks rolling across frozen fields. Guerrilla fighters hiding in jungles, striking from shadows. "On Earth, we learned something about war," Sophia said. "We learned that the species that survives is not the one with the best weapons. It's the one that refuses to give up. It's the one that will do whatever is necessary." She showed them Hannibal's elephants crossing the Alps, attacking Rome from an impossible direction. She showed them the Mongol warriors who pretended to retreat, drawing enemies into traps. She showed them resistance fighters who hid among civilians, who burned their own homes rather than let invaders use them. "This is not war," Counselor Threve said. His voice was disturbed. "This is chaos, this is barbarism." "This is survival," Sophia replied. "And right now you're losing because you're too civilized to survive." Admiral Gresh leaned forward. His eyes were hard, but there was something new in them. Respect, perhaps, or fear. "You believe humans can do better." "I believe humans understand something you don't. The Vorath adapt to weapons. They learn patterns, so we don't give them patterns. We change everything all the time. We use weapons they've never seen, tactics they can't predict, strategies that make no logical sense." "That sounds like madness," a Morthani commander muttered. "It is madness," Sophia agreed. "That's why it works." The council debated for hours. Some species wanted to continue with their existing strategies, certain that enough firepower would eventually work. Others wanted to retreat to the core worlds and build defenses. A few wanted to attempt negotiation, even though every attempt at communication with the Vorath had ended in slaughter. Finally, Gresh stood up. The old warrior looked tired, but there was iron in his voice. "I have commanded fleets for 300 years, he said. "I have won battles against enemies who should have destroyed me. I did it by learning from my mistakes. Right now, our biggest mistake is pride." He looked at Sophia. "Give humans one world, one battle. Let them show us what they can do." The vote was close, but it passed. Sophia nodded once. "We'll need 3 weeks to prepare, and one condition." "Name it," Threve said. "No interference. No matter what you see, no matter how wrong it looks, you let us fight our way." Sophia's eyes were cold. "Human warfare isn't pretty. If you're not ready to watch, don't watch, but don't get in our way." Threve looked at the human general for a long moment. He had dismissed humanity as primitive, violent, dangerous. Now he wondered if perhaps that was exactly what the galaxy needed. "Agreed," he said. Sophia turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind her, the Coalition's greatest minds began to argue about what they had just witnessed. None of them understood yet. They would learn. Rain had fallen on Kello's IV for a week straight. The agricultural world was known for its gentle weather and rich soil, perfect for growing food that fed 3 star systems. Now the fields were empty, the cities abandoned, and the sky burned with the light of incoming ships. Colonel Yusuf Hassan crouched in a bunker carved into volcanic rock. He was surrounded by screens showing troop positions, weather patterns, and the slow approach of the Vorath fleet. His uniform was dirty, his eyes were tired, but his mind was sharp. "Enemy fleet entering atmosphere in 30 minutes, his communications officer reported. Coalition observers confirm 17 organic vessels. "Good," Yusuf said. "Everyone knows their positions." Acknowledgements came from across the planet. Human soldiers had spent 2 weeks preparing. They had studied the Vorath's attack patterns, analyzed their adaptation cycles, and built something the Coalition had never seen before. "A trap." The Coalition observers watched from orbit in horror. Instead of fortifying the cities, the humans had destroyed them. Power plants had been rigged to explode. Water supplies had been contaminated with chemicals that would burn Vorath biology. The beautiful farmland was now a maze of buried explosives and hidden killing zones. "They're destroying the planet they're supposed to defend," a Kelori officer whispered. "That's what they told us they would do," Admiral Gresh replied. He watched the screens with grim fascination. "The humans call it scorched earth. If you can't hold something, make sure your enemy can't use it either." The Vorath landed expecting resistance. They found nothing. Their creatures spread across the empty cities, searching for prey that wasn't there. Their organic sensors detected human life signs scattered across the continent, small groups hiding in caves and bunkers. Easy targets. They moved to attack. The first Vorath squad entered what had been a residential district. The buildings were empty, the streets silent. They moved forward in their flowing, liquid way, sensing for movement. The ground exploded beneath them. Yusuf had planted thousands of improvised explosives across the planet. Not energy weapons, not plasma, not anything the Vorath could adapt to quickly. Simple chemical explosives, shrapnel made from metal fragments. Old-fashioned destruction that tore through flesh regardless of how it evolved. Across the planet, similar explosions erupted. Vorath squads walked into buildings rigged with fuel-air bombs. They crossed bridges that collapsed into chemical fires. They entered tunnels that flooded with toxic gas. The creatures adapted. They always did. Their skin hardened against shrapnel. Their bodies developed resistance to the chemicals. They learned to sense the explosives before triggering them. But the humans changed too. "Switch to pattern Delta," Yusuf ordered. The explosives stopped. Instead, human soldiers emerged from hiding with kinetic weapons, old rifles, shotguns, weapons that fired metal projectiles at high speed. The Vorath had evolved against energy weapons. They had no defense against simple bullets. The creatures screamed as lead tore through their adaptive armor. They began to evolve again, hardening their flesh against physical impacts. "Pattern Echo," Yusuf said. The soldiers retreated. Artillery opened fire from hidden positions, raining. Chemical shells that the Vorath had just lost resistance to. Then the artillery stopped, and soldiers attacked from a different direction with different weapons. Every few hours, the entire strategy changed. Weapons cycled, tactics shifted, attack angles rotated. The Vorath tried to adapt, but they couldn't adapt to everything at once. Every time they evolved to counter one threat, the humans hit them with something else. Coalition observers watched in stunned silence as human soldiers did things no coalition training would ever teach. They charged into certain death to draw Vorath forces into kill zones. They used their own wounded as bait. They fought in the mud and the rain and the fire without shields, without advanced armor, just flesh and metal and rage. "How are they still fighting?" the Kalori officer asked. Human casualty reports were streaming in. The losses were significant. Their command structure should have collapsed by now. "Humans don't fight like us," Gresh said quietly. "They don't need central command to keep going, they just need someone to kill." As dawn broke over Kello's IV, the Vorath fleet began to retreat. For the first time in 2,000 years, the nightmare creatures pulled back from a world they had attacked. Yusuf stood in the ruins of what had been a city. His soldiers gathered around him, bloody and exhausted and victorious. They had held the line. In orbit, Admiral Gresh sent a single message to Coalition Command. "The humans have done what we could not. They stopped the Vorath. I do not fully understand how. I am not certain I want to understand how, but they did it." He paused before adding one more line. "I recommend we give them whatever they ask for, and I recommend we never make them our enemy." The Battle of Kello's IV was over. The war was just beginning. Blood still stained the floor of the field hospital when Admiral Gresh walked through its doors. He had seen wounds before, battle damage that his own species wore with pride. But this was different. These humans had been broken in ways that should have killed them, and yet they refused to die. A soldier with bandages covering half her face argued with a medic, demanding to return to her unit. Another man sat quietly, his left arm gone below the elbow, studying maps on a tablet. A young private stared at nothing, his eyes seeing something far away and terrible. Colonel Hassan sat on a supply crate, drinking water from a canteen. His uniform was caked with mud and dried blood, some of it his own. When he saw the Admiral, he nodded once but did not stand. "You came to see what victory looks like," Hassan said. It was not a question. "I came to understand," Gresh replied. "My people have fought wars for 1,000 years. We have lost soldiers, mourned the dead, celebrated victories. But I have never seen anything like what your people did on this planet." "What did you see?" Gresh struggled to find the words. "I saw soldiers walk into fire. I saw them drag wounded comrades through poison gas. I saw a woman strap explosives to her chest and charge into a Vorath formation because it was the only way to create an opening for her team. Sergeant Adebyo, Hassan said quietly. She had 2 children back on Earth. She knew what she was doing. That's what I don't understand. Gresh sat down across from the human, his massive body awkward on the small coalition furniture. Your species values individual life. Your culture speaks of rights, freedom, dignity, yet you throw yourselves into death without hesitation. How? Hassan looked at the Admiral for a long moment. Then he pointed at the wounded soldiers around them. Every person in this room is fighting for someone. Adebyo died so her children would have a galaxy to grow up in. That private over there charged a Vorath nest because his friends were trapped inside. We don't die because we don't care about living. We die because some things matter more than living. Gresh was quiet. In Morthani culture, sacrifice was honorable, but it was calculated. You sacrificed when the odds favored victory. These humans sacrificed when the odds meant nothing at all. I have a request, Gresh said finally. My officers want human training. They want to learn your tactics, your strategies. We can teach tactics, Hassan replied. But tactics aren't the problem. Your people freeze when they're asked to sacrifice something, a position, a ship, themselves. Until they can accept loss, they can't fight like us. The Admiral learned this truth over the following weeks. Human instructors tried to train coalition forces in the new methods. The technical knowledge transferred well enough. Alien soldiers could learn to use kinetic weapons, set ambushes, coordinate rapid tactical changes. But when the simulations required sacrifice, they failed. A Rathani commander was given orders to abandon a forward base, leaving defenders behind to delay the enemy. He could not do it. His training, his culture, his entire species had evolved to protect the collective. Deliberate sacrifice of some to save others broke something in his mind. General Reyes watched the failed exercises from a command center. Her face showed no surprise. We can't teach them to be us, she told Captain Okonkwo. 200 years of evolution separated them from the survival instincts we still carry. They're too civilized to win this war. Then what do we do? We lead, not advise, not support. We take command. Human officers, human strategy, human decisions, they follow. Okonkwo felt the weight of what Reyes was suggesting. The coalition had existed for 1,000 years. They had never surrendered military authority to anyone, let alone a species they had considered primitive just years ago. The War Council met to debate the proposal. Councillor Threve argued against it. The coalition's principles required consensus, shared authority, respect for all member species. Giving humans control of the combined fleet violated everything they believed. Okonkwo stood to speak. She had earned her place in this chamber through blood and fire. She had fought alongside alien soldiers and watched them die because they couldn't adapt fast enough. Your principles are killing you, she said. Your way preserved your honor while worlds burned. Our way costs lives but wins wars. Every day you debate, the Vorath grow stronger. Every week you wait, more colonies go silent. She looked around the chamber at the frightened, divided faces. Choose, give us command, or watch your civilization end. The vote was held. It was closer than anyone expected. But in the end, fear won over pride. Humanity was given strategic command of the coalition fleet. That night, Okonkwo stood alone on the observation deck of Harmony's Edge. She watched ships gathering from across the galaxy, the greatest fleet ever assembled, all of it under human direction. General Reyes joined her. You know what comes next. The Vorath home cluster, end this where it started. A lot of people are going to die, humans and aliens both. Okonkwo nodded slowly. That's what war costs, we've always known that. Reyes looked at the stars. The coalition is trusting us with their survival. Then we'd better not fail. They stood in silence, watching the fleet prepare for the final battle. 6 months of preparation had brought them here. The combined coalition fleet, 3,000 ships from every species in the Alliance, hung at the edge of the Vorath home cluster. No one had entered this region of space and returned in 2,000 years. Admiral Gresh stood beside Captain Okonkwo on the bridge of the flagship Resolution. The old warrior had volunteered to serve under human command, a decision that had shocked his own people. But he had seen enough to know that pride had no place in survival. "Final approach," Okonkwo announced. Her voice was calm, steady. "All ships report ready." The fleet moved forward. They had practiced human tactics for months, learned to change strategies without warning, accepted that some ships would die so others could advance. The coalition had become something new, something harder, something willing to pay any price for victory. The Vorath met them at the edge of their domain. Organic vessels poured from the darkness, thousands of them screaming through space with hunger older than civilization. The battle began. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Coalition ships attacked in waves that made no logical sense, cycling weapons and formations with chaotic precision. Human commanders gave orders that seemed like madness until they weren't. Ships sacrificed themselves to create openings. Crews stayed at their posts as their vessels burned around them. The Vorath adapted, they always did, but the fleet adapted faster. Every time the enemy evolved a new defense, the coalition hit them with something else. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, chemical weapons, radiation, vacuum, fire. The organic fleet burned. While the battle raged, a small strike team moved through the chaos. Colonel Hassan led 50 human marines and 30 alien soldiers toward the Vorath command vessel, the heart of the enemy hive. Their dropship was torn apart on approach, but they made it to the hull, cutting through organic armor with tools designed for mining. Inside, the vessel was alive. Walls pulsed with strange fluids. The air smelled of rot and something older. The team moved forward, losing soldiers to traps and defenders at every turn. Hassan reached the central chamber with 11 survivors. What he found there stopped him cold. The Overmind hung in the center of the room, a massive organic brain connected to thousands of tendrils that spread throughout. The ship and beyond, it was ancient, twisted, wrong in ways that hurt to look at. But there was something else, something underneath the hatred and hunger. Pain, old, endless pain. A voice entered Hassan's mind. It was not words exactly, but he understood. We were not always this. We were made, changed, broken. We cannot stop. We cannot choose. Help us, end us. Hassan raised his weapon. One shot would destroy the Overmind and end the Vorath threat forever. The coalition would be saved. The galaxy would survive. But he hesitated. He reached for his communicator. "General Reyes, I'm at the Overmind. Something's wrong. They're not enemies. They're prisoners. Someone made them into weapons a long time ago. They're asking me to free them." Static, then Rey's voice. "Can you?" "I don't know. It could work, or it could make everything worse." A long pause. "It's your call, Colonel. Whatever you decide, we'll live with it." Hassan looked at the Overmind. He thought about all the worlds it had destroyed, all the lives it had taken. He thought about the terror it had caused. He thought about ending that terror with one bullet. Then he thought about something else, about humanity's own history, about the wars they had fought, the enemies they had hated, about the times they had chosen mercy instead of vengeance and found peace instead of endless conflict. He lowered his weapon. "I'm going to try something stupid," he said. "If it doesn't work, destroy this ship with me inside." He stepped forward and placed his hand on the Overmind. Pain flooded through him, memories not his own. A peaceful species, curious and kind, captured by ancient beings who needed weapons, twisted, broken, programmed to destroy. 2,000 years of screaming inside a prison of their own flesh. Hassan pushed back. He pushed with everything human, with the stubbornness that had kept his species alive through ice ages and plagues and atomic fire. He pushed with the same force that made humans refuse to surrender, refuse to give up, refuse to accept the impossible. The Overmind shattered. Not destroyed, freed. Across the galaxy, Vorath forces stopped. Ships went dormant, creatures collapsed where they stood. The war ended not with extinction, but with liberation. 3 weeks later, a new summit convened on Harmony's edge. The chamber was crowded with delegates from every species, including several former Vorath who were slowly learning to be themselves again. Counselor Threve approached Ambassador Volkov, who had watched everything unfold from Earth. "I owe you an apology," Threve said. "When humanity first came to us, I thought you were primitive, violent, dangerous." He paused. "I was wrong about everything except the last part." Volkov smiled. "We are dangerous, but that's not all we are." "No," Threve agreed. "You showed us the face of war, the real face, the brutal truth of what it takes to survive. And then you showed us something else, mercy, even for your enemies, even when destruction was easier." He looked at the former Vorath delegates learning to speak again. "That's what I didn't understand. Your species doesn't fight because you love war. You fight because you love something enough to die for it." Volkov thought about all the humans who had given their lives in the past year. Soldiers and scientists, commanders and privates, people who had known they might not survive but fought anyway. "That's the secret," he said. "We've always known how to kill. What makes us human is knowing when to stop." The summit continued. New alliances formed. Old wounds began to heal. The galaxy moved forward into an uncertain future. But one thing was certain. The Coalition would never forget what humanity had taught them. War is not about weapons, it's about will, and mercy is the greatest victory of all.